Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today we're going to be painting Walk with a Witch, and I'm going to be sipping on a little Shiraz, so let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for the materials today I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. You could certainly switch up the size if you're painting along with me, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. The colors are titanium white, deep yellow, burnt umber, which I'll call brown. I have green oxide, chrome orange, and Mars black. And of course you can switch up those colors, but that's what I'm going to be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and I've got 3 brushes here. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 11 round brush and a number 3 round brush, and I'm going to refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And again, you can switch those up if you'd like, but that's what I'm going to be using. If you're painting along with me, you're probably going to want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be supplying you with a couple of additional resources that will help you through your painting process. The first of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same colors to the brushes to the big canvas. So that's there for you. And then what's also down there is a downloadable image of the final painting, which is free to you. So you can just print that and use it as a visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting the entire canvas. We're painting the background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using white, yellow, and brown. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to have a very light area over a little bit off-centered, a little bit to the right. And then I'm going to have it going darker and darker as it goes towards the edges. So I'm going to start with mostly white and a touch of yellow on my brush. And I'm going to be doing a vertical paint stroke. So I'm going to get this whole center area, or what is going to be my like alleyway area, all nice and painted. I'm going to go probably, I don't know, maybe about this wide with this lightest area before I go into adding a little bit more yellow or a little bit more brown. So this is a really large area, and it's really cool if you still have some streaks going through there. It's going to add to the illusion that I'm trying to create here, which is just my witches going through this enchanted forest. So that's about as wide as I'm going to go. Now I'm going to start picking up more yellow. And what's going to happen is it's going to start to get a little bit darker, and I will back it into that that brightest area a little bit. That's going to, little crummy on my painting. That's going to allow it to blend in a little bit. So again, just picked up yellow, maybe a little bit of white to help this transition look nice and natural. And now what I'm going to be picking up is yellow, white, and brown. So I'm going to pick up all 3 colors, and it's going to start to get darker and darker as I go towards this left. And I'm going to eventually stop picking up the white, and it's going to get nice and dark as I go over to that left. You can have yours as dark as you want. You can have yours as light as you want. I want mine to have a nice bright center focal area. So that's why I'm using making it go darker and darker as I go to the left and the right. Now I'm just picking up some brown. I don't wash my brush throughout this process because I want these colors to kind of tuck together and make them look like they belong together. And when you're getting off into these side pieces, The stripes are going to make it end up looking like they're, I don't know, maybe off in the distance kind of tree trunks that are out of focus. So that works super well also. And you can, again, get it as dark as you want, have that transition work. You can back that paint back into the lighter section just to make sure that it blends. I'm going to come over here using my brown and my yellow to get this to go nice and dark as I go over here to the left hand side. So again, you can have yours as, you know, if you wanted yours a little bit lighter, you can certainly still be using some white, but I am definitely wanting mine to go really nice and dark over here on the edges. So brown and yellow, no more white. I'm not picking up any more white. And you could even just use brown too. And then doing these nice long strokes so I don't have what I refer to as cut marks in the middle. So that way it looks nice and finished, and we won't have to go back and do a second step on it. And then we are going to be using our pencil for the next step. So once you've got your background all nice and painted in, you can put this large brush away in your water cup or wherever you'd like to. Get your pencil out and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're drawing the outline for our witch. We're going to be using our pencil, and I do want to forewarn you before we do this step that you want to have your canvas nice and dry. It'll make it much easier for you to do a pencil outline if your canvas is dry. So you could either, you know, take a little bit of an extra break if you'd like to, or you could blow on it. Or you could certainly take out a blow dryer and just blow dry it. So whatever method you want, maybe yours is already dry by now, but definitely dry canvas is going to make it easier. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers. I do want to just give you a little vote of confidence that there's no two witches alike in this world. So if yours comes out a different shape than mine, it's all right. Yours can be, you know, have broader shoulders or a bigger hat or a bigger skirt or dress or a smaller dress. Whatever you want is totally fine. So I'm going to give you a couple of markers as to where I kind of have mine, and then we'll just, you know, draw some shapes, and hopefully by the time we've got this all done, it'll look something like a witch's body. So I'm going to come onto the right hand side of my canvas. I'm going to have my witch about a quarter of the way over from the right hand side. So in order to figure out where that is, just kind of visually have your halfway point, and then somewhere in the middle of that is kind of where the body's going to go. I'm going to have the top of her shoulders are going to be about a quarter to a third of the way down my canvas. So I'm going to just kind of make myself a little bit of a line that's going to be, I would say, about 1.5 to 2 inches wide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of round that off as her shoulders. So I'm just going to kind of take this and round it off, something like that. I'm going to give her a little bit of a neck. We're just going to start at the top and work our way down. So I'm going to give her a little bit of a neck in through here. And then I'm going to put a circle for her head just so I can make my hat the correct size, or so it doesn't look like it's too big or too small for her. So I'm just going to kind of make my circle something like that. And yours might be bigger, or, you know, if your body is wider, your head might be a little bit bigger, but just know that, you know, you just want some kind of circle that looks kind of in proportion to those shoulders. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a little bit of a brim. So I want my brim to be really, really wide out. So I'm going to just kind of do something like this, and I want it to be really crooked and, you know, floppy, almost like a big beach hat. You can make yours however you want it, but this is the way that I'm going to be doing mine. So something like that. And then I'm going to put the top of the hat, it's going to be as wide as the circle, and then it's going to get more narrow as it goes towards the tip, and it's going to be wrinkly, and mine's going to kind of like curve and flop over, but you could certainly have yours whatever way you want. I'm going to have the tip of mine, it's not going to come further than here. It's going to be a little bit in and pretty far up, maybe about 1 inch away from the top of my canvas. So I just make myself a little bit of a dot. And then I'm just going to kind of make myself this like a wriggly, wiggly line that's going to end up meeting that circle, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side, and I'm going to keep this as the pointiest part of my hat. So something like this, and it gets a little bit wider as it goes towards her head. And that's what I'm going to do for the outline of that. So the body part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take from her shoulders, this is going to be her arms in a minute, but from in through here, this is, I want to make like her waist and then out for her dress. So I'm going to take from the corner of the shoulder in through here, and I'm going to bring this down in a little bit of a diagonal line. So a little bit of a diagonal line, not too far, you know, maybe about 1.5 inches or so, or 2 inches. And then I'm going to buckle it out for her rear end, somewhere around here, and then maybe they don't have to be equal. You don't have to have 2 bubbles on each side. Maybe she's turned a little bit, or maybe we're at a little bit of an angle. And then I'm going to bring this down in through here. This is going to be the side of her dress, and it's just going to kind of flip out at the edge. And then over on this side, I want this side of her dress to be super flowy and come really far out into this walkway, but I don't want it to overtake the whole thing. So I'm going to be making almost like feather type lines, as if it's the edges of a feather. And then that way, when I go to paint it in, I will have a visual place to kind of stop and have my have the flow of the dress kind of stop. So now that I've got this area in through here, I'm going to say, all right, maybe it's going to be something like this. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be really painting over the whole thing, but I wanted mine to be nice and flowy, so that's how I'm going to do that. We got to put some arms on her. So I know this arm in through here is probably going to be hidden a lot by her hair. So really all I'm going to do is give her a little bit of an elbow. So I'm going to come a little bit higher than her waist, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of a diagonal line in through here. It's going to drop to about where her waist is, and then I'm just going to kind of meet it up in through there. So this is all going to be hidden by her hair, and this is going to give you the impression that that's an elbow. And then on the other side, she's going to have another elbow, but it's going to be a little bit further out, somewhere about there. And this one, we're almost going to see, we're going to have a little peekaboo spot through her arm. So I'm going to bring this up like this. This is going to be the outside edge of her arm. I'm just kind of bringing it in a little bit like that. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a peekaboo spot in through there. And that's all I'm going to do for the outline of my witch. We're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your outline done, you can put your pencil down, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting in the first layer of our witch, including her hat. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and orange paint. So I'm going to start up at the hat, and I'm just going to be painting in the entire hat with black paint. So your hat might reshape a little bit as you're going through this process. If it does, don't worry about it. I'm just going to get my whole hat painted in black. One of my tricks to make sure that I have a pointy brush, especially since I'm not using the smallest brush right now, is I take my brush when it's in my paint, and I have it loaded pretty well, and I spin it on the side of my palette. So that's going to get it nice and pointy. So when I am doing these little smaller areas, I've got a little bit more control over what's happening with the tip of my brush. And then I'm just going to kind of paint this whole thing in with black paint, and we're going to, when we go to do the body, we're going to be using black paint and orange on that. But right now, just on this hat part, we're just going to be using a little bit of black paint. I'm going slow so I can kind of keep the shape that I originally had. And then I'm just going to paint in her neck, and you want to just cover up your pencil lines. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to work on these little pointy areas first, because once I get these in here, I can kind of cruise along the whole the whole rest of it nice and quickly. But getting the smaller areas takes me, I would like to slow down so I can stay within the lines, color within the lines. And again, you can imagine your beautiful witch to be whatever kind of shape you want. And if something goes wrong on these arms, you can always cover it up with some hair later. The hair can be strategically placed in spots to cover up anything that might have gone awry. And then once I've got that in there, as I come down the body, I'm going to be using black paint. Once I get past her rear end, I'm going to be using black paint on the right, and that's where I'm going to start. And then I'm going to transition into the orange over on the left-hand side. So I'm going to just start with some black paint just to make sure that I've got her whole top portion done. And then I'm going to take a whole bunch of black paint, get this right side painted, something like this. As I get towards the edges, that's when I'm going to start to kind of just flick my brush out so it almost looks like that feathery look that I was kind of alluding to earlier. And then going to get this whole right side done. I'm going to have mine all the way down to the bottom of my canvas. But as soon as I start cracking over this halfway point, that's when I'm going to also start picking up orange. And then as I move more towards the left-hand side, I'm going to pick up less and less orange. So right now I have black on my brush. I'm going to pick up some orange, and I'm going to start to almost like blend it in with this right hand side. So I'm using these kind of down and out as if it's just maybe like long flowing pieces of hair or flowing pieces of fabric. You can really have some fun adding movement into this as you get up into, if you crossing over into this upper area, just kind of make sure it blends a little bit. You can always add more black to your brush if you feel like the orange is creeping over too much, or if it's not blending the way that you want. And then as I'm working my way over here, it doesn't just have to be out like that. You can certainly add some wiggle to it. But again, I had black on my brush from adding it there, but as I'm coming over here, I am just picking up orange, and what's going to happen is it will get lighter and lighter as I come over towards this side. And I want these, it's almost kind of looking like flames to me. I want it to just kind of have its own movement, like it's being blown by, I don't know what, her celestial energy or whatever you want it to be blown by. And we're going to do another layer on it too. So if yours doesn't come out, oops, I like it when the instructor says oops, but there is no oops in painting, right? We just roll with it. We just roll, just work it on in. And I'm going to just finish up this little section in through here. I was saying we are going to be doing another layer on this skirt or on her dress. So if it doesn't come out exactly as you had wanted it to, don't worry. We will definitely work on it in another step. And then we are going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got her main coat on here, you can wash and dry this brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the first layer on her hair. So we're going to use the black and the orange again, and we're going to use that medium brush. And I'm in essence going to do it pretty similar to how I did the skirt, but I'm going to give you a couple of little strategic places to start it and stop it around her neck. So I'm going to put a little bit of orange on my brush, and I'm going to come to the right of her neck. So you have a kind of a bright piece on that side that tells the viewer that is in fact her hair. And then I'm going to go all the way over to her where her shoulder is, the end of her shoulder on the left hand side, and give myself like a little flip out. So I know that that's kind of as far wide as I want the width of her hair coming out of her hat. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a peekaboo spot of her elbow right in through here. So I like to kind of strategically place a couple of pieces of hair. So again, it kind of gives me a little bit of a roadmap that I can follow and not go over as I do this, because I tend to take my brush seems to get away from me sometimes. So I'm gonna kind of take a little piece of hair and bring it over in this area in through here. I know that this is going to kind of connect up in through there. And then I just want the rest of the hair to just kind of flip out and flick out in through this area as if it's got kind of a mind of its own. So I'm going to put just a touch of black on my brush. I did not wash it. And I'm going to start underneath her head, her hat, and just start bringing down some pieces of hair. I'm going to bring a couple out into the air part, maybe flip a couple up in through there. I'm not going to use a lot of black because I know that it will take over, and I definitely want the orange to be represented. So if once you've got a little bit of the black on there, when you go to switch to orange, if the orange isn't bright enough, just wipe your brush off on your paper towel, because you have wet black there that will be that can be dragged by the orange, and then this way you'll have a good assortment of the bright colors and of the dark colors. So again, I'm just kind of having fun with this, just getting it to kind of flip out of her hat. And you can add as much as you want in through here. It can be super long. You can have pieces that are detached, but we'll be doing, again, another layer that's going to add a lot more energy into the entire painting. So if this doesn't turn out exactly as you want right now, again, don't worry about it. We'll have time to add stuff to it later. And then we're going to be using the same brush for the next step. So once you've got her hair on, you can wash and dry that medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our pine trees. So I'm going to have these pine trees kind of lining a walkway, I guess. And I want them to be I want a really big one over here on the left, and I want it to be smaller and smaller as it goes off in the distance. So I'm going to use my medium brush, and I'm going to be using brown and black paint, and I'm going to put them both on my brush at the same time. And right now I'm just going to make myself a series of tree trunks, which are really just going to be my place markers for my trees. My first one that I'm going to have is if this is I would say my halfway point in my canvas, I'm going to come over to the left maybe an inch or two or so, and I'm going to bring it down almost halfway down my canvas, maybe a little bit higher than the halfway point. And this one's going to be smaller, so I'm not going to be pushing too hard. And again, this is just my place marker. I'm going to bring it maybe about an inch or so away from the top of my canvas, something like that. And then I like to go my smallest one and my biggest one first, and then however many I want in between. It helps my brain space them better. So I did my small one, now I'm going to do my big one. This one's going to be maybe about an inch or so away from the edge of my canvas and maybe about a third of the way up. This one's going to be wider, so I'm going to just make myself a little horizontal line to tell me stay wide. And then this one is going to go up, it's going off of my canvas. So I'm just going to kind of make that all the way up. I think I'm going to add a little more black just so you can see it. So something like that. And now I think I'm going to have two more in between here. So again, just brown and black. Maybe I'll give myself a couple of markers. Maybe this one will go here and this one will go here. And then again, they'll be a little bit wider as they get towards that left-hand side. This one I'm going to make just a touch taller than that one, and then this one I think is going to go off my canvas as well, because these are getting really close and I want them to look really pretty big. So I'm just going to make, oops, I missed my mark, but that's okay. There'll be a shadow underneath there. And then once you've got them on there, what we're going to do to paint them in is use a down and out kind of paint stroke. I'm going to leave a little bit of the bottom trunk part visible, and I'm going to use more brown on this one, so this one ends up being a little bit lighter. So I want this to look like pine trees, so I want especially these two to have pointy tops. So I'm going to kind of go down and out like this, and I am going to keep mine really kind of free and messy. I don't want it to look too systematic. What will probably end up happening is when they get to these larger ones, the trees are going to start overlapping one another. So that's why I'm going to start with my shorter or my smaller tree first. And again, I'm just kind of going down and out. And it's okay right now if you can see through your leaves or your pine needles and stuff, your branches, because we're going to have a whole nother step that's going to cover them with another layer of color. This is just kind of our base primer coat. I'm picking up more black now. This way they're getting darker and darker as they come towards me over here on the left-hand side, and I'm making it wider and wider at the bottom. And I know that a pine tree is going to look kind of almost like a tall triangle, so I'm making sure that that's kind of the shape that I emulate, and I want my branches to be really messy, which is why I'm going nice and fast. And then as I get towards this biggest one, this one's going off the canvas, so I might only have a little peak of that background color underneath here on this left-hand side, and then as it goes towards the right, you'll see a little bit more peek through spots. So it will overlap a little bit, so I'm just gonna roll with it. Whatever happens, happens. That's what Mother Nature does. She overlaps. She, one thing will encroach on another one's space. So you just roll with it, make it look as, as fun and natural as you want. And then let's see, what are we going to do next? We're going to use this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your pine trees, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting a shadow underneath our pine trees. You could also interpret this as the edge of our pathway, so whatever works in your creative head, that's totally fine. I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using mostly brown paint, maybe a little bit of black too, especially as I get down towards this left-hand side. I'm going to put brown on my brush. Really what I want to do is just kind of ground these trees, and in this mystical world that we live in, I don't want them to look like they're floating. So I want her to kind of look like she's going down some magical pathway. So I have a little bit of brown paint, and I'm really just kind of making myself a messy kind of line. I'm going to pick up a touch of black paint so it works its way into the bottoms of these trees, and you can work it into the little walkway if you want to. You could even bring some of those pieces up as if it's maybe some, ground vegetation or something. I'm gonna put just a little bit of maybe white on my brush just so this edge almost disappears off into the distance. I know I didn't say white, but I decided to add white. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this shadowy area in here, you can wash and dry this medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are painting forest fog. This is something that came out of my head and onto the canvas. So in my head, she's kind of entering from the dark forest, and maybe this is like some fog or mist that she's just emerging from. So I'm going to be using some black, brown, and orange paint. And I don't want it to go too wild, crazy. I don't want to cover up all of the background colors that are in here, so I'm never going to use a lot of paint on my brush. And then when I get around her head area, I'm going to attempt to kind of make it almost like in a circular fashion, as opposed to, you'll see I'm going to be doing it really messy over here, and then when I get up in through this area, I'm going to start to create almost like a circular type sphere around her. So I'm going to touch my brush in a little bit of black. Again, you don't need much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of tap it on the side, something like this. And again, I was tapping my other finger too. Sorry. Sometimes I need my whole body moving to make these things go right. So I've got it coming over here. So I'm going to be using like tapping motions, and as I come in, you'll see my brush swirling a bit, but I'm starting with black. And now that I've got that black on there, and I want it to kind of look like her skirt is emerging out of this. Once I've got that, I'm not washing my brush. I'm picking up a little bit of brown, and I'm going to start to overlap some of this black that I just created or that I just put on. And I'm going to start to do these little swirls. This is one of these steps that definitely only comes out of an artist's head. It just happened as I was painting it the first time. So, you know, you just have fun with it. Maybe yours ends up being a little bit different than mine. But I felt like, you know, she needed to emerge from somewhere. So I've got that started. Now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up a little bit of orange, and I'm going to start to overlap that as well. And then you can get it to come as close to her as you want. Maybe it even overlaps her a little bit. Whatever you're feeling, just let happen. But again, I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush, and I am letting it I'm letting it overlap with the other colors that I've put on there. And then as I'm getting towards this area, this is where you're going to start to see, I want to make it in that little almost like sphere type brush stroke, because later we've got a big bright area that we're going to be putting around the other side of her head. So you have fun with this. You can keep tweaking it as much as you want. I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. Maybe a touch more darkness over here. And then let's see, what are we going to do for the next step? I think we're going to, let's switch brushes to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this mystical fog coming out of the forest, you can put this medium brush away in your water cup, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing her hat. I'm going to use my small brush, and I'm going to be using green, yellow, and white. And if something goes wrong, I can always bring back some black. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to put green, yellow, and a touch of white on my brush at the same time. I'm going to have some highlights over on this left-hand side and maybe over on this edge, just to show, because that's where the main light source is coming from. My trick here is I do not use a lot of paint on my brush, and I can always add more paint to my brush. It's tough to take it off of the canvas once it's there. So I'm adding a little bit of a highlight in through here. You don't have to rub it in with your finger if you don't want to. You can rub it in with your brush. And I'm going to make this lightest area kind of almost blend into the hat. Now, this hat's wrinkly, so you can have some light spots and some dark spots, and it will all make sense. To get this top part to look really kind of three-dimensional, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lighter color that I have on my brush right now, and I'm going to bring down into this part of her head. I'll bring down like a crease or a seam, so that way you're going to almost see the form of her head, and you can do that over here on the right side as well, and that's going to give you the visual information that this is going to be a rim. I'm going to use more green on my brush around the rim of the hat, and knowing that these colors, except for the white, are pretty translucent, they're going to take on that black underneath. So when you get the paint on there, if you want more of a solid edge at the edge of the hat and you want it to fade into the black, you can almost just rub it in and get it to fade into the black, and it will get darker as it dries. So the thicker the paint is, the more vibrant it's going to be on top of the black. I do want there to be a little bit of a visual edge over here, so I'm using the green as kind of the color of the hat, and then the yellow and the white are going to be more of the highlight part over on that left hand side. And again, if anything goes wrong, you can certainly bring back some of your black. So let's say I've got a whole bunch on here and I'm like, oh, that's too much. I can just take a tiny bit of black and start blending it in with that green. And that's going to help to make it, you know, just blend as much as you want it to. I'm going to add a little bit more of a highlight over on this left-hand side because I really want that to read as it is being lit up by that light source. So you can certainly get yours to be as light as you want. It will dry a little bit darker than it is when it's wet, so just give it a minute. You know, if it's not quite the way that you thought it would be, let it dry, and then, you know, see what happens to it when it dries on top of this black, and then you can go in and tweak it as much as you need to get it into that color that you want it to be. And you can certainly just keep tweaking these edges. I'm thinking that that's looking pretty good. I've got the shape of her head that I can visually see. I've got some nice color on the hat, and then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got the hat as beautiful as you want it, you can put your small brush away in your water cup, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're doing the second layer on our pine trees. So I'm gonna be using my medium brush, and I'm gonna be using orange and green paint. So I'm gonna start with some orange, and I'm in essence doing the same thing that I did on the first layer, only this time I'm doing it messier, and I wanna make sure that I don't cover up that whole tree. So this is just in essence meant to look like the highlighted part. I'm going to do more orange on the right hand side and more green on the left, but I don't want it to just look orange and, you know, orange on one side and green on the next. So you'll see how I'm going to do this. I'm going to just kind of get some of this orange on here. I haven't washed my brush, I haven't even reloaded. I'm just kind of doing it in a real messy kind of fashion. I'm reloading now because I'm running out of paint. So, and if you run through some wet black paint, just roll with it. That's quite all right. And you can see I'm kind of going down the center too. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some green paint without washing my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing. When I go to do the green, I'm not only doing the left side, but I'm also kind of skirting it down the center too, so that way they intermingle a little bit. And again, I've got green paint, and I'm just kind of doing this down and out. And I'm not even really thinking about it all that hard. I just want to make sure that they kind of intermingle and that I have not painted over all of my first layer. This is, again, just meant to be accent. A lot of this is in the silhouette, so we don't need it to be too dominant. It will darken as it gets, as it dries, but you can see again, I'm still kind of just overlapping the green and the orange and, you know, making sure I've got some representation down the center of those trees. And then while I've got the orange and the green on my brush, I'm just going to add a little layer down here at the bottom as well. And then we're going to switch brushes to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your second layer of your pine trees on here, you can put the medium brush away, get your small brush out, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I am putting highlights on my witch's body. So this is going to be on her arm, on her left hand side of her body in through here, and if you feel like you need any on the shoulders or anywhere else for that matter, feel free to do so. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using mostly white and black, but if you feel like you want to use another color, if you want to add some green into her dress, feel free to do so. I've just got her with a black dress, well, black and orange, but you could certainly add some of that green in if you want to. And again, this is a less is more kind of step, so I'm really just adding a teeny tiny bit of white paint onto my brush. I know that I want my brightest area over here on the left hand side, so I'm going to just kind of give it a little bit of an outline in through there. Wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and then I'm just kind of rubbing it into the body. And for me, the highlight is going to happen where it would naturally. So if her bum bumps out a little bit, that's where the light is going to hit it. So if you can keep in your head, where would the light actually hit? If the light source is over here, it would hit the area that's bumping out a little bit. So that's how I keep it straight in my head. Make sure that you cover up any little pencil marks that you have. I'm going to put a nice bright light in through there, maybe a little bit on her elbow in through there, and then I'm going to put one in this arm here too. Again, not much paint at all, maybe just a little bit of white in through there. Wipe it off on my paper towel. It's a little bit too bright for me, so I'm actually picking up a little bit of black on my brush just to get this to blend in a little bit. And then if you felt like you needed any more, you could certainly, you know, add any kind of little tweak that you want, maybe a touch on her shoulder in through here, but I'm not going to carry it back too far because it wouldn't make sense to with the light source being so far over there, but maybe just a tiny bit. And then if you felt like you wanted to put it anywhere else, feel free to do so, but I think that's all the place I'm going to put. I have a little spot on my dress that was missing some color, so I'll put that there as well. And then we are going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got the highlights on the dress, you can put your small brush away and take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so since we are painting a witch, we've got to paint some mystical, magical wind in our painting. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to be using are white, orange, brown, and green. And I might add some yellow, but if I do, I'll let you know. So my thought process here is there's almost this very bright like vortex in through this area, in through here. That's where I started to add this circular motion over here. I want that to continue. And it's going to continue into her hair, and it's going to swish from her dress, and it's going to swish up into the trees, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun to paint. So I'm going to start with white, and this is going to get me just kind of started as to where I want this wind and in what direction. So I definitely know that I want some from her hair, and this is going to be kind of the center circular kind of area. I'm not doing a solid line. I'm almost just kind of skipping my brush along, and I'm just starting with white paint so that way I can get an idea of how the direction that I want this wind to go in. And I'm just going to kind of bring it over in through here and maybe just a touch over here just so you can tell that they connect a little bit. Maybe something in through here. And at times I'll use a bit of paint on my brush, but I'm not always using a lot. What I like to do is just kind of load my brush and then run out of paint. And that helps me to get some thicker spots and some thinner spots. I know that, so that's one area. I know that I'm going to have some, you know, coming down from my trees. I really want this all to kind of look like it's coming in a general direction, a similar direction for them all. So I'm taking this and just kind of swishing it in through this area. I do want some of these lighter areas in through here. So again, I'm still kind of keeping this circular motion. I want some to come out of her dress in through here. So again, if you want to use other colors, feel free to do so, but I'm just starting with the white, again, just so I can get a good idea of the direction that I want this to go in. And I don't want to cover up everything that I've done, so I am kind of just being strategic with where I'm placing them at my wind pieces at the moment. So again, I've still kind of got this whole general flow going in that direction. I don't want to bring super white bright up in through here, but I'll contend to that in a minute. And again, this is kind of looking like feathery stuff to me. So now that I've got my general direction, I'm going to pick up some orange, and the orange is going to get my dress to start to merge into the wind that has started on the pathway. And again, have fun with this. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm going to put some more up in through here. I will in a minute start to add some brown to my brush, but I'm just going to have fun. I know that I want this all to kind of look like it belongs together, so I'm really just enjoying the process. Maybe a little white on my brush and through there. I'm going to put some orange coming off of her hair into this wind. So right now I'm just really picking up orange, but I didn't wash my brush, so I still have some white on there, and maybe this kind of creeps up in through here. And you know, if you do something that you don't like, just give it a minute, let it dry, and then you can just add some more stuff on top of it. So don't feel like every brush stroke has to be perfect. This is really just an interpretive type playful painting that we're doing. So you know, there shouldn't be any stress involved in it at all. And while I've got that white and orange on my brush, I'm going to start to kind of incorporate a little bit into this walkway, so it ends up kind of really looking like it belongs as well. I think I must have a little bit of brown on my brush too, because it looks like I've already incorporated some brown, but that's okay because I'm going to be doing that anyways. And I do want some in through here, and again, just I'm just having fun. I want this all to really just look like it belongs together. I'm going to put some green on my brush up and through here to get these upper pine trees to look like they are also being kind of pulled into her magical, mystical wind, and everything can cross over one another. This is just meant to look like it's all being encapsulated by her witch magic. I'm picking up a little bit of brown right now because I want this side to be a little bit darker over in through here. Maybe her skirt kind of just brings some more deep colors down into this part of the path. And again, I'm just having fun. So you can have as much fun as you want to. You can have yours more, you know, more windy than mine. You can have yours more subtle than mine. Just enjoy the process. Keep adding as much wind on here as you want. You can, you know, get this pathway to be as disguised as you want, or as soft as you want, as light as you want, you know, whatever works for you. I've got maybe some green going on in through here. I'm just having fun. Interpret it whatever way that you want. Make it look as, you know, witchy as you want, as spooky as you want, as together as you want. You can keep adding as much as you want. And then we are going to be, let's see, oh, I got a little green in there. That's pretty cool. It's like her hat now is, oh, I want a little bit more green in there. We're going to be, let's see, what are we going to do? We're going to switch brushes to our small brush. So once you've got all of your magical wind in your dress and in your witch, you can put this, if you can ever stop. I have trouble stopping these kind of steps. You can put this medium brush away, and you can take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting the first layer of our cat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my small brush, and I'm gonna be using just black paint. And I just want you to keep in mind that this is an interpretive kind of painting, and if your cat doesn't look exactly properly proportioned to the typical black cat, it's okay. We are in a magical, mystical painting. So if he's got a big tail or a big head or huge feet, it's all right. Who's to know it needed to look just like a regular cat? So I'm going to put the rear end on first, and the outside of the back legs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up maybe about 4 inches, and I'm going to come in about 4 inches, and that's going to be kind of the top of the rear end. And then I'm going to make myself kind of the top of an oval, and I'm going to come down a little bit. I'm going to bring it in just a little bit for the outside of this back left leg. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right hand side. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to bring it in just a little bit, something like that. And I'm going to stop it maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches above the bottom of my canvas. And I'm going to just make a little poofy foot something like that, one there, and I'm going to do the same thing on this side, something like that, and then I'm going to bring two inside pieces of the legs up like that. And they don't necessarily have to be split for a far way up. I mean, they could maybe just a third of the way up or almost halfway up, and you don't need a really wide space between them. So if it's really wide, just kind of narrow it, something like that. And then I'm just going to paint the butt in black. So I'm just taking my small brush and just painting that black. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put the back or the side of the cat's body. And again, this is all just going to be black. So if it's not perfect, it's all right. So the side is not going to be very big. I'm just going to go from where the butt is. I'm going to just kind of go a little bit of a diagonal line, and I'm just going to make it go a little bit further than the leg itself, maybe about a half of an inch to an inch. And then I'm just going to bring it down like this and over. Think of it when you're coming down this way, it should kind of diagonally line up with the split in the leg. So something like that. And you can just kind of color that in. We've got that colored in with black. Then I'm going to put my front leg on. You could theoretically see all four legs. I'm just going to have you see in three, as if the other front leg is going to be hidden behind the body. So this one, I wanted to make sense. This is going to be the chest area, so I wanted to come in just a little bit, down like this, and I need it to be shorter than this foot here because the cat's walking that way. So I'm just going to bring it down like this. Maybe about halfway down this leg is where I just kind of bump out the little paw a little bit, and then I'm going to bring the other side in through here. And I'm not concerned about it being anatomically correct with where the leg bends or anything like that. I'm just trying to give the impression that this is some kind of black cat, be it long hair, short hair, whatever the case may be. And then I'm going to put the head on. So the heads are pretty large in comparison to the body. So I'm only going to go up maybe about half of an inch to 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to make this really pretty long or wide, and it's going to meet about halfway into the back with this like diagonal kind of line. And then when I go to do the front is going to be, think of it like a circle. I'm going to have it just barely past where the chest is. So just barely past where the chest is, and then it kind of meets in with that chest. So not too much, just a little bit. And then I'm going to color that in black. I'm going to give myself a couple of little ears. So cat ears are going to be kind of pointy. So I'm going to put one in through here. And then maybe this one is over in this direction. And you could have yours whatever way you want. That's how I'm going to do mine. And then I'm going to give myself a really big cat tail. So I'm going to have mine coming out this top left area of the rear end. And it's going to come add a little bit of a diagonal, and then it's going to flip up, you know, a curl over. So somewhere in through here, and I will widen it and fluffy it out after I've got it on here. But I'm going to do something like this, and when it comes back around here, I'm going to have it pretty darn poofy in through here. And then maybe I will get that a little fluffier, and you can have your tails as fluffy as you want or as narrow as you want, totally up to you. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your cute little cat silhouette in here, you can wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are doing the cat shadow and highlights. So I'm gonna be using my small brush, and I'm gonna be using black and white paint. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna put very little bit of black paint on my brush. My shadow from my cat is gonna come from my light source way over there. So I'm gonna have it pretty narrow at the cat, and then I'm just gonna make it kind of wider as it goes off of the canvas. I'm not gonna use a lot of paint, and I'm not terribly concerned if it's at exactly the right angle, because I definitely want it, you know, to be sucked into the wind and vortex and just be kind of, you know, a fun kind of shadow here. So I've got a little bit of paint on my brush. I'm gonna start at these feet. So I'm just kind of wiggling my brush left to right to get the shadow coming behind those feet, something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to I'm just going left to right, and I'm hardly using any paint. So that way it looks as if we are just darkening the land underneath it, which is what a shadow does. So I got this, and I'm just going to kind of make it a little bit wider as it goes away, something like that. Nothing too tricky here, just getting, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly with a tail and all that stuff. It's just being trailed off into the mystical night. And then I'm just putting a little bit of white paint on my brush. I did not wash it. I want my highlight on my cat to be coming from the light source. So I'm going to add a little bit of white on the top of its head. And then I'm going to add a little bit on its face. These are just the edges. This is going to get maybe a little bit on the ear, little bit on the ear, a little bit along the edge of the body. I don't need to totally outline the whole edge of everything on the cat. It's going to be fluffy and furry, so part of it will be brighter than the others. Part of it will take on a brighter highlight. I'm doing the light areas right off the bat, and then I'm going to trail it into a little bit darker. So I'm still just kind of using white to put these bright highlights on the edge of it. And then if you want your tail to be fluffy and long, you can certainly add, you know, longer pieces. And then I know that the top of the back would have a little bit of a highlight. So I've got a little bit of white, and I've got wet black paint on there right now, so that's going to just help me. I'm just kind of blending it in a little bit. So that's a little highlight there. I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight in between the ears. So if your black paint underneath has dried, you can pick up a little bit of black paint with the white. I don't have much paint on my brush at all right now. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on the edge of this leg here. I'm adding a touch of black to my brush right now so I can get this to blend in. So in essence, I'm just kind of giving a little bit of a gray tinge to the edge of that leg, which is going to look like it's being highlighted from that light source. And I'm going to do the same on the edge of the body right in through here as well. So a little bit of white and black, just to give you the information that it is being lit up from that light source. You could do a little bit on the tail too. So wherever you feel like you want to accentuate areas of that of the fur, that's where you'll want to put a little bit of a highlight. And of course, adding that highlight on the back, that's going to tell the viewer, that's going to give the cat a little bit more three-dimensional aspect to it. And then we just have one tiny little step left to go. So once you've got your highlights and your shadow on your cat, we're going to use this same brush, so you can wash and dry your little brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of any painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I think I'm gonna sign this one in the bottom left. I'm gonna use black paint. I sign my initials. You could certainly sign your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you want. It's your painting. You sign it with whatever identifying mark you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you have painted yourself a pretty witch in her own little mystical vortex. And I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.